but I'd really like to share some basic information.
He actually was over there.
You're trespassing just on purpose, just to do it because he just wants to start something. So I just get scared.
I got emotional about it a couple times because I've been approached by police officers, you know what I mean? I've been stopped. I've been in situations where I've been by myself and they've approached me on some real, what are you doing? Trying to punk me, bully me. And it's like, I just be real cordial with them and calm, because I know what goes on, you know what I mean? I know what goes on when nobody's looking. It's 10 o'clock at night, I'm walking home from my cousin's house and the police approach me. I'm not going to smart talk this guy. I have no witnesses. Ain't nobody out here, you know what I mean? They can do whatever they want and it's their word against mine. Who are they going to believe? Especially growing up in the area that I grew up in, we all know that police are not, I'm not going to say not nice people, but not people that we can always rely on, you know what I mean? I think it definitely is a reality because they do have power and they do abuse it, so.
When you first see the two stories, okay, it just happened to two people. But then as you start to pick it apart, more cases start piling up. And you're like, damn, this is really a problem. You're realizing, this is happening all over the country. It's, supposed to be a country that's, the most progressive and stuff like that, even though through slavery, we still overcame it and stuff like that. But then you sit back and realize, that stuff still exists. I feel like all police officers have, this type of bias, this biased opinions about everybody, that they stop or they interact with. Their uniform is just their uniform, they're people too. So it's I feel like the way they were brought up or the way they think, it can affect it can have a major effect on their interactions with people.
Now, let's hear what the police chief is saying about stop and frisk laws. You think he will have something good to say, right?
No, but
why not?
I don't know. I guess I just have the same feeling about it as everyone else would. To be suspicious about it, I suppose.
So, are we saying we should be suspicious about everything?
No, I'm not saying that everything. Let's hear and try to have an open mind.
When we met with Police Commissioner Ray Kelly, he flatly rejected a federal judge's conclusion that his tactics violate the Constitution.
Now, the critics call it racial profiling. The judge called what you do, stop and frisk, unconstitutional. Why is it not racial profiling?
Well, you have to apply a formula of sorts. Do the stops comport with the description given by the victims of perpetrators of violent crime? And our stops certainly do. 97% of the shooting victims in New York City are black or Latino, as is the identified perpetrators of these crimes.
The issue for some of the people, the thousands who are stopped, is that if they've committed no crime, you find no weapon, that is creating a sense of resentment. As an African-American male, I know I've been pulled over a couple times, for reasons I couldn't understand. And afterward, I sort of felt a little violated, a little frustrated. Can you see where the people are coming from?
Absolutely.
In terms of why they're frustrated?
Absolutely. Understandable. Nobody wants to be stopped. We have engaged in a major training evolution for several years focusing on these issues, to do these stops with courtesy, do them with respect.
Stop and frisk allows officers to detain people they deem suspicious in high crime areas. A federal judge said the practice targets minorities, calling it demeaning and humiliating. Her ruling calls for a monitor to oversee NYPD practices and a trial program for some officers to wear cameras to record arrests, as they do in an increasing number of cities. Again, Kelly is skeptical.
When do you turn the camera on? When do you turn it off? Do you have it on when somebody comes and wants to give you confidential information?
For all the critics, Kelly points to these blunt facts. There is far less crime and less blood in his streets. In New York City, there have been more than 7,300 fewer deaths in the 11 years since Bloomberg took office than in the previous decade. That's a 50% drop.
What we're doing and what we're trying to do is save lives. Murders are down to record lows, shootings down to record lows. Things are going right here in New York, and this decision certainly has the potential of overturning it.
Wow. What can you say, man?
Well, find a way for people to police their own communities. I don't know.
You think we can? Now, What do you think are the worst states for black Americans?
I'd probably say Mississippi, Georgia, Florida.
Okay, so let me tell you.
How many out of
There's
how
10. Top 10. Number 10 is Arkansas. It has 15.7% black residents. The black home ownership rate is 42.8%. The black incarceration is 2,432 per 100,000 people, the 24th highest.
So 2,000 out of 10,000?
Every 100,000.
Okay.
Black unemployment rate is 16.5%, tied for the fourth highest. Unemployment rate of all people is 7.8%. All right. Arkansas is amongst the worst state for black Americans. Nearly 16% of Arkansas population identify as black, yet the state doesn't have a single black representative in Congress. In addition to limited representation, black Arkansas residents are disproportionately likely to be unemployed. Last year, the state unemployment rate for black workers was 16.5% versus 7.8% unemployment rate of the state's labor force. Can you imagine that? Deep in it. Let's go to Kansas, number 9.
Kansas?
Yes. Percentage residents black, 5.8%. Black ownership rate, 36.1%. Black incarceration rate, 3,306 per 100,000 people. Even higher.
I wish they would break that down to some kind of statistical. I don't like 3,000 out of 100.
The black unemployment rate is 11.8%. Unemployment rate of all people is 5.6%. A typical black household in Kansas made 60.2% of the median white household income in 2013, slightly wider than the national income gap. Lower incomes among the state black population are due to part to the relatively large gaps in education attainment and incarceration rate compared to white residents, among other measures. Nearly 32% of the white state resident has attained at least a bachelor's degree in 2013, while 18.3% of the black residents have done so, a difference of nearly 14 percentage points, larger than the national gap of 11.6 percentage points. Right? Who do you think is number 8?
I don't know. I'd like to see what you're looking at. Where are you looking at this? Atlanta Black Star?
Yeah. Well, it's 247wallstreet.com. 247wallstreet.com. What do you think is number 8? Think about it. It's close to you and I. We reside there.
In New Jersey?
Jersey, baby.
My state? Come on, get out of here.
New Jersey, number 8. Percentage resident black, 13.7%. Black household ownership rate, 39.1%, 23rd highest. Black incarceration rate, 1,992 per 100,000 people, is the 13th lowest. The black unemployment rate is 13%, 21st lowest. Unemployment rate of all people, 8.2%, 7th highest. Nearly 16% of the New Jersey black population lived in poverty in 2013. The figure is lower than the national poverty rate of 17.1% and partially reflects the fact that the state is among the wealthiest in the country. Yet the typical black household made only 58% of the typical white household, a wider income gap than across the country. Only 1 in 5 black residents have at least a bachelor's degree in 2013, much lower than nearly 40% of the white adults who have held at least such a degree. As Wilson explained, without economic opportunity, people often turn to alternatives that may be illegal. Blacks were more than 9 times as likely to be in prison in 2013, nearly twice the national ratio. Home ownership is another issue that many black Americans face. While more than 75% of the white household owned their home in 2013, fewer than 40% of the black household did, a much larger disparity across the U.S. So, We are number 8 for the worst state. I would never have thought about that, though. Would you?
No, but it's not surprising because here you have, I mean, if you're comparing disparity between wealth and poverty, and this is a state, one of the richest states, and a state that has the poorest people as well. So, sure.
But here is number 7. Connecticut.
Why you get that look? Are you really that surprised?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised.
Percentage of black residents, 10%. Home ownership rate, 35%. Incarceration rate, 2,260 per 100,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Black unemployment rate is 13%, but the total unemployment rate is 7.7%. And look what number 6 is. My home state.
Michigan.
And look at this. Percentage of residents black, 13. Home ownership, 42%.
That's high.
Yeah, because...
It's predominantly black.
Well, no, at least Detroit is, and then there's just lots of homes. It's not like apartment place like this place is, you know. There are a lot of... black home ownership, 42. Black incarceration, 2.
Well, no, that's high, though, because there's only 13.9% of the residents that are black, though. That's pretty high.
Of the whole state. Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty high. 42.9%. That's pretty good.
2,169 people black people per 100,000 are locked up. I'm trying to understand that, the way that stat is written. Black unemployment, 16%. Overall unemployment rate is 8%. I have to read about Michigan, I'm sorry, since you got to do Trinidad. 100,000 black Michigan residents, more than 965 died last year, a higher rate than all but a handful of states. The same rate for white state residents was lower by 214, nearly the widest gap by this measure in the country. Poor health and generally high death risk among black Michigan residents can be partly explained by economic and social factors. For example, 16.5% of black workers in the state were unemployed last year. A relatively high level of unemployment leads to lower health insurance coverage and exacerbates health risk. The jobless rate for black residents was also nearly 8% higher. 8 percentage points higher than the rate for white Michigan residents, which was one of the wider gaps reviewed. African American children in Michigan also had the worst educational outcomes compared to most of the nation. Additionally, Michigan reported 31 racially motivated hate crimes per 100,000 people, many of which targeted black residents.
What do you think number 1 will be? I would have had no clue. What do you think
I'm going to go for Mississippi or Alabama.
Nah.
Do you know what it is already?
Yeah.
Oh. It's nothing in the South?
Uh,
Come on. Let me turn the page. So here after Michigan, you have Pennsylvania running in number 5.
Mm-hmm.
After Pennsylvania, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Rhode Island, of course. Well, I mean, how many black people are in Rhode Island? 6.4%. And I understand Rhode Island is a lot of poverty in Rhode Island. So, of course, disproportionately, it's going to fall on the backs of black people. Minnesota is number 2. 25% home ownership rate. Unemployment rate for blacks is 15%, but the total unemployment rate is 4.9, almost 5%. Number 1, home of Scott Walker, right? Minnesota, Wisconsin. There's only 6.2% black people there. 28% of them own their own home. 4,000 out of 100,000.
4,000.
Unemployment is 15%. But the unemployment rate for all is 6.7.
So the unemployment rate for those 6.2% blacks is doubled.
Based on this index, Wisconsin is the worst state for black Americans. Typical black Wisconsin households made roughly half the white median household income. A wider income gap than the majority of states. The black residents are far less likely to not have health insurance. They are at a much greater